The views, opinions, and content of this show are those of the host, guests, and callers. They do not necessarily reflect those of Local Matters Broadcasting, LLC, its owners, partners, affiliates, assigns, or heirs. Having said that, it's now time to say good morning, St. Johns County. Welcome to the weekly radio show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging, better known in our community as the COA. We are your local nonprofit agency who for the past 51 years has been leading and advocating for the dignity and independence of seniors and responding to their changing needs. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, broadcasting to you live from the studio WFOI 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. Before we get into our show, let me remind everyone, like I do each and every week, if you have a question, comment, or a suggestion for a radio show topic, you can send that by email to radio@coasjc.org, or if you're interested in learning of the official number of licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop, I have that answer. And you can find that out by also sending an email to radio@coasjc.org. All right. Also, before we get into our show this morning, I want to announce once again that we are in the midst of the Subaru Share the Love event. Meals on Wheels is proud to be a national charity partner for the 18th year. From now until January 2nd, Subaru and its retailers will donate a minimum of $300 to charities for every new vehicle leased or sold. This initiative will benefit seniors in our community, so please select Meals on Wheels when you purchase or lease a new Subaru vehicle. To learn more, you can visit www.mealsonwheelsAmerica.org/Subaru-share-the-love. Oh my gosh, that is very long. So anyways, if you go to Meals on Wheels of America, look for Subaru Share the Love. You'll be able to find out more information. And if you buy a Subaru, you can give some of that money to COA, and we'll get meals out to our seniors. One of the many programs that we do at St. Johns County Council on Aging. My guest this morning is Dr. Melanie Lomaglio. Dr. Lomaglio holds a Bachelor of Science in Physical Therapy from McGill University in Montreal, Canada, a Master of Science in Neurological Rehabilitation from the University of British Columbia, and a Doctor of Physical Therapy from the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences. She is board certified in neurology by the American Physical Therapy Association and specializes in treatment of people with Parkinson's disease and Parkinson's-related diseases. She works at STARS Rehab, where an assembly of physical, occupational, and speech therapists provide rehabilitation services. And she is the founder and president of the Rebloom Center that offers education, social support, and group voice and exercise classes to those living with Parkinson's. Good morning, Dr. Lomaglio.
Thank you. You did a great job.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come in here and be with us on the show this morning. And one of the things that I always love to do, especially when I have somebody on the show for the very first time, is for our listeners to get to know a little bit about our guests. So, I've already given them a lot of information as far as your education and your employment, but tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself, if you would. Apparently, you're from Canada, so, tell us about that journey coming down here, becoming a resident here in St. Johns County and so forth.
Yeah, well, I have been here close to 30 years now. I was just looking, my graduation date, 1997. So I will be a physical therapist for coming up 29 years in 2026. So after I graduated from McGill in the very cold city of Montreal, I left and came to North Carolina. So the winters there are tough. If anyone's listening from up north, you know what I mean. Lots of snow, cold temperatures. And so I was committed to going south when I graduated. And at the time, there was a lot of demand for physical therapists, or what we call physiotherapists in Canada, to come to the States and fill open positions. And so I was recruited down to the state of North Carolina. It turns out it's actually pretty chilly there in the winter, too.
It can be, yes.
Not quite as cold as Canada, and definitely not as much snow, or if any, but ice storms and whatnot. So I stayed there for a couple years. I had a great job working in inpatient rehab, treating mostly people with stroke. But we wanted even warmer weather, and so my now boyfriend at the time, decided to move to Hawaii. And that was an excellent decision. And so we lived there for almost 3 years and sort of moved around the state of Hawaii, spent most of our time on the Big Island. And then from there went to Washington State, where I went back to school to do that master's degree in rehab science, focused again a little bit on stroke at the time. And then from there, moved to St. Augustine, where I actually took a faculty position at the University of St. Augustine, teaching in their Doctor of Physical Therapy program. And that's when my Parkinson's journey sort of really began. I always treated people with Parkinson's, but once we landed here, decided I wanted to do something for the community and got involved with a local support group. So that's really sort of, I know we're talking today about Parkinson's disease. People always ask me, well, how did you get interested? I guess the answer to that would be I've always been interested in neurologic rehabilitation and people with Parkinson's disease. You really get to establish a close relationship with them because their disease is changing over time. And that really appealed to me to develop close relationships with the people I was helping. So started off with a support group and sort of grew from there.
Okay, so you've been around then. So
Yes.
Canada, where it's very, very cold through the winters, I'm sure.
Yep.
And then a beautiful state of Hawaii, which I've only been to once and spent about a week, so I can only imagine what it's like to live there year round.
It's wonderful.
And so then you ended up here, which kind of has a little bit of a combination. No snow, thankfully, but
Yes.
we do get some of the colder weather. So
Yes, but I enjoy this cold weather, so it's not.
I agree. Yeah.
Put a sweater on.
So I run 3 times a week, and I really enjoy when the weather is like this,
Perfect running.
as compared to the middle of summer when it's 100 degrees outside and I'm trying to do my run. So, all right. Well, thank you for sharing that. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take our first break right now. And we'll be right back after these messages to have more of a conversation. And welcome back to Weekly Radio Show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging here on WFOY 102.1 FM. Your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, joined in the studio this morning by Dr. Melanie Lomaglio, who is the president of the Rebloom Center. And we're going to be talking about that here shortly. But one of the things that you do there at the Rebloom Center is you're serving those with Parkinson's. And so I just wanted to kind of jump into that first. Most people have heard of Parkinson's, but I kind of think that maybe a lot of people don't know much about it. So in this segment, would you take some time and educate our listeners about this disease?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying it is the fastest growing neurodegenerative disease in the world. So it's, exceeding Alzheimer's disease right now. And pretty much anytime I go out or if I'm with a new group of people will start talking or tell me, oh, I know somebody with Parkinson's, or my uncle has Parkinson's, or my husband. Last night it was my husband died of Parkinson's. And turn to me and say, why do so many people have Parkinson's? And it's true. It is growing quickly, and there's many reasons for that. One of the first reasons is our population is aging. So our baby boomers are of the age when Parkinson's disease is most common. People live longer. So the number one risk factor for Parkinson's disease is age. So as you get older, your risk continues to go up. And then the third one is environmental exposures. And so this is a more recent theory, and there's many expert physicians and scientists out there now trying to make the claim that Parkinson's is largely a preventable disease. So the argument is that your genetic profile sort of, loads the gun, and your environmental exposures pull the trigger on a diagnosis. So we have a lot of folks, farmers, for example, have a higher risk of Parkinson's disease due to their exposure of various pesticides and herbicides. Paraquat being a big one that you may have seen in the news. There's been some commercials for some class action lawsuits of farmers blaming their Parkinson's diagnosis on their repeated exposure to paraquat. So herbicides, pesticides, heavy metals, so mechanics are people that work in the dry cleaning industry that use solvents, air pollution. So some of the industrialized countries or countries like India and China who have a lot of pollution are having the highest incidence of Parkinson's disease. So there's a lot of evidence now that these environmental exposures sort of trigger the disease. Agent Orange is probably something that a lot of our listeners may be familiar with too. So our Vietnam vets have a higher incidence of Parkinson's disease, and Agent Orange is a herbicide and is now recognized as a cause of Parkinson's disease. So our vets can get extra benefits to sort of help them navigate the disease as they go through it. So those are the reasons why, Parkinson's disease is so prevalent. And then if you want, I can go into some of the common
Yeah,
features.
if you would, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So Parkinson's causes 4 what we call cardinal symptoms. There's an acronym that we use called TRAP, T-R-A-P. The T stands for tremor. And tremor, it's not just any tremor, it's what we call a resting tremor. So there's different forms of tremor. Some people have what we call a benign tremor or essential tremor. That tremor is usually inherited by family members, and there's a strong family history. People with Parkinson's, it's a resting tremor. So like you and I right now sitting here having a conversation, if I had Parkinson's disease, you might notice my hand shaking, or could be something as small as a pinky finger shaking in the earlier stages of Parkinson's disease. And then when I go to pick up my cup of coffee, that tremor goes away. So it's only present when I'm at rest. When I go to use my muscles, it dampens or goes away.
And so would that be kind of the first sign that somebody has it?
It can be, yeah. So there is a misconception that all people with Parkinson's have a tremor. It used to historically be called the shaking palsy, quote unquote. But that there's 20% of folks with Parkinson's disease that don't have a tremor. So it is one of the cardinal features, but you do not have to have a tremor to be diagnosed with Parkinson's. And that's an important thing to realize, because the folks that don't ever develop a tremor often have a delay in their diagnosis. So those folks will usually present with some of the other cardinal features like rigidity. So if we go back to TRAP, T-R-A-P, tremor, rigidity. The third one, A, stands for akinesia, or what we more commonly call in the clinic bradykinesia, which is slowness of movement. So brady means slow, kinesia means movement. And the final one is postural instability. So those are the 4 cardinal signs. You only have to have 2 to receive a diagnosis. So you have to have bradykinesia, that slowness of movement. That's the one feature that's required for a diagnosis. So bradykinesia plus tremor, or bradykinesia plus rigidity. And rigidity is just a fancy word for muscle stiffness.
Okay.
Yeah, so people have a lot of stiffness in their muscles, typically of the axial muscles, which means neck, trunk, shoulder, hips. So those joints are most affected by Parkinson's disease. And together, those things can contribute to like the shuffling gait pattern. So going back to these 2 sort of subtypes of Parkinson's, there's the tremor dominant and the non-tremor, or what we call like a more gait affected version of Parkinson's disease. And then the 4th cardinal feature, which I mentioned, postural instability, is another fancy term for just poor balance reactions, trouble with, falls and things like that. And that is not required for a diagnosis either, because that develops later in the disease. So when people are falling early in the disease, it's almost what we call a red flag, meaning it's probably not Parkinson's, and it may be a more sinister disease, what we call like Parkinson's evil cousins, which is a whole other topic of conversation, but good to be aware, because a lot of people do get diagnosed with Parkinson's and then within the first year or 2 start falling. And it's important to, bring that up to your physician, because that is not the typical progression of Parkinson's disease.
I'm glad that you bring that up, because my cousin, who passed away at the age of 71, he at first was diagnosed with Parkinson's, but as time went on, it was discovered it was Lewy body dementia.
Yes.
And so that tends to happen often with the Lewy body dementia, is they think it's Parkinson's at first.
And it really physiologically is the same as Parkinson's. So Lewy body disease is, I would say, more sinister, progresses more quickly, but it's characterized by the onset of dementia within the first year of motor symptoms or before motor symptoms. So if someone is having some cognitive issues and then a tremor develops, that's another red flag. So that this may not be true, what we call idiopathic Parkinson's disease, could be Lewy body. Or you could develop that tremor, but then within that first year, develop signs of dementia, confusion, visual hallucinations is a big one with Lewy body disease. Those are all indicators that this is a more aggressive disease, progresses more quickly. And the medication that we use to treat Parkinson's disease can actually exacerbate some of those what we call psychotic symptoms. So delusional thoughts and visual hallucinations can be made worse when you try to treat the motor symptoms. So unfortunately, folks that fall into that bucket can't take the medication or have to take very low doses. And so they end up having more motor symptoms because when they take the medication to control the motor symptoms, their hallucinations and delusional thoughts become worse. And those symptoms can be very, very troubling and often dangerous.
And this isn't a question that I had listed for you prior to this, but it just makes me, as you're talking and we're discussing this, I've seen some videos of some of the different things that they're doing now where they're able to, go into the brain and they're able to do whatever they do, and stimulate the part of the brain that's affecting the tremors and so forth, and those tremors just subside.
Yes.
Have you had any opportunity to research that more thoroughly?
So that's been around for about 30 years, 25, 30 years. So it's pretty a mainstream treatment for Parkinson's disease. And it's what we call deep brain stimulation, or abbreviated DBS. And it's really the easiest way to describe it is like a pacemaker for your brain. So everyone sort of understands what a pacemaker is.
Mm-hmm.
So little tiny electrodes get implanted deep in the brain and stimulate groups of neurons to sort of control some of those symptoms of tremor and stiffness. So they do not control all symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to if you have Parkinson's disease and that's the treatment that you're interested in, that you see the right physicians to make sure you are the right candidate to get the best outcome. Because if you have symptoms like hallucinations, for example, those can get much, much worse. Or if you're falling, that symptom can get worse with that surgery. Cognitive impairment. If it's, mild cognitive impairment, it's okay. And if it's pretty stable, you'll probably still be a candidate. But if you have progressing cognitive impairment, not a candidate, because that will make those symptoms much worse. But for the right candidate, so somebody with good balance, good swallow function, that's another one, good cognition, and none of those things have to be perfect, but good, and you have uncontrolled tremor or stiffness, then that surgery can be really life-changing in a good way, in a positive way.
And have you personally been able to experience that with any of the people that you serve?
Yes, several patients. Yeah, they'll start with treating one side of the brain, and then usually 6 months later, they'll go in and treat the other side. So Parkinson's is characterized by asymmetry. So it starts on one side of the body and progresses to the other. So they'll treat the more affected side of the brain first. And then, if you have a good outcome, they'll go in and treat the other side. So do the implantation. And people recover quite quickly. It's a remarkable surgery where people, for the most part, are awake. They've just started doing a sleep DBS surgery. So it's not for the faint of heart. They put your head into what we call a halo. So they put little tiny screws into your skull to make sure your head doesn't move, because they wake you up and talk to you and stimulate the brain and make sure they're in the right area to implant that electrode. Okay. So some of the important things, like your speech centers, are right next door to the area where they're going to do the implantation, and they don't want to get that stimulation, that electrical current, to get into the speech area, because then you end up with very slurred speech.
Sure.
So they want you awake, and they also want to make sure that when they stimulate, that your tremor goes away. So you have to go into it not taking your medications.
Wow. Okay. Fascinating stuff. All right. We're going to continue our conversation right after these messages. You're listening to the Weekly Radio Show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Weekly Radio Show of the St. Johns County Council on Aging here on WFOY 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA. And let me just let you know that next week in the studio, we will have Darren White with Able for Seniors joining us in the studio. So tune in next week, same place, same time, right here on WFOY 102.1 FM. In the studio with me today is Dr. Melanie Lomaglio, who is the president of the Rebloom Center, and she was in the previous segment giving us a great education on Parkinson's. And during the commercial break, I was talking with her and asking her about is there a mild form of Parkinson's? And the reason that I asked was because my grandmother, who lived to be about 93, she was diagnosed with mild Parkinson's. At least that's the diagnosis she was given, because she just had some mild tremors in her hands, and that was basically about it. It didn't evolve into anything worse than that. So I'm just curious, is that accurate? Is there a mild form of Parkinson's?
I would say that every person with Parkinson's has a different journey. And so some people progress very, very slowly, and some people progress at a moderate speed, and other people progress quickly. So yes, I would say there are more milder forms of Parkinson's disease. If she had Parkinson's, she had to have bradykinesia, right? You wouldn't get the diagnosis with just a tremor. It's possible she was misdiagnosed, but it's also possible that she had just a slow changing condition. My question is, how old was she when she was diagnosed?
That I can't remember. Probably mid-80s, maybe.
Okay. So that's great too. So she lived a long time without Parkinson's. Most people, the average age of onset is 55 to between your 55 and 60, or sometimes early 60s is the typical age of onset. So if she was able to make it to 80, Parkinson's free, she probably didn't have a long run with it. So Parkinson's disease, I always tell people, because nobody wants to get diagnosed with Parkinson's. It's it's a terrible thing. It's difficult to accept, but it's not a death sentence. So people are going to live a long time with Parkinson's, and part of my job is to help teach people how to live and live well with the disease. Parkinson's doesn't typically shorten your lifespan. Something else usually will get you in the end, whether it's cancer or heart attack. Some people do die of Parkinson's related, like swallowing can become an issue and lead to things like pneumonia. But people typically live a long time with Parkinson's, and everyone progresses at a different rate, which is a good segue into talking about the Rebloom Center, because part of what we teach people is the importance of exercise. And exercise, at least today, is the only treatment that we know that can slow down the rate of progression. So exercise is very good for your brain. Everyone knows it's good for your heart and lowering your risk of heart attack and stroke, but people don't realize it's very good for lowering your risk of developing Parkinson's. And then once you have it, for controlling the progression of Parkinson's. Unfortunately, in the end, Parkinson's always wins, and we don't have a cure. But there are treatments like exercise, in particular aerobic exercise, that has been shown to slow down the rate of progression.
All right, so segueing into the Rebloom Center, right? So first, what is the driving force behind your passion to help those with Parkinson's? Because you're the one who started the Rebloom Center, right? So
Yes.
Apparently you're passionate about that. So what is the driving force behind that passion that led you to start the Rebloom Center, and then go ahead and educate our listeners more on what you do at the Rebloom Center?
Sure, yeah. So as a neurologic physical therapist working at STARS Rehab, we started, obviously we took people in for rehabilitation who have Parkinson's disease, but in our current healthcare system, you have to discharge people. You can't treat people year round, even when they're living with a progressive disease. It's a really hard thing for people to understand, but that's the way the healthcare system is set up. Nobody's allowed to receive year-round care. We're supposed to get them on a home program or get them ready. So what I found was when we would discharge people, the gains that they made in therapy were lost because they didn't have a community program to go to sort of sustain those benefits. And they would end up going home and becoming more sedentary again. And then Parkinson's would sort of accelerate in that sedentary behavior. So we started an exercise class, and I applied for a grant through the Parkinson's Foundation to provide that class at no charge. So when you provide free programs, people can come because there's less barriers. So the program grew very quickly. So we would discharge people from rehab, from STARS, into that exercise class to sort of keep them going between bouts of rehab. And we got that grant 3 years in a row. And so the program kept growing and growing. We were able to add a couple different levels of exercise classes. So we had 3 different levels. So we could challenge people no matter sort of what their fitness level was or what stage of Parkinson's they were in. And then after 3 years, I knew my luck was going to run dry. So I knew that I had to do something to sustain the program, because I certainly didn't want to stop, because I saw how much it was helping people. And that is when the Rebloom Center was born. So, one of the questions when you're doing your grant reports is, how do you plan to sustain the program? And I would always start a nonprofit. And at that 3-year mark, I knew that's what I had to do to keep it going. And we started the nonprofit. It's been 3 years since then. So we've established it's been just over 3 years. It was 3 years in August. So we've been running our programs for about 6 years, and it's just growing exponentially. So there are a lot of people who need our services in St. Johns County. If I could clone myself and open a Rebloom Center at the north end of the county and the south end of the county, I would. That's one of the barriers for some people is traveling.
Mm-hmm.
We are centrally located across from Cobblestone Publix. We're in a big warehouse. We have about 3,000 square feet there to run our programs out of Stars Rehab. So I'm lucky enough that we sort of rent the therapists there to run the classes. We can do rehab there as well. But, some people live 30, 40 minutes away from us, and they still come, but it's a barrier, and I wish I could be down the street from them. But yeah, we have many, many different programs available from yoga. We have a yoga class on Friday. We have a program called POWER. It's an acronym, stands for Parkinson's Wellness and Recovery. And that's one of my favorite classes because it's really grounded in some of the rehab techniques that we do, like functional mobility training. So we turn, for example, sit to stand into an exercise, or getting up and down off the floor into an exercise. There's not much things that are harder to do than to haul your body up from the ground, which is really important if you fall to know that you can get up, so you don't have to call the fire department. So that class is sort of centered around strengthening functional movements. And then one of our most popular programs is our boxing program. People do not hit each other, but they do hit.
That's what I'm picturing in my mind as you said that.
Hit your head when you have Parkinson's. It's actually one of the risk factors for Parkinson's is concussions and blows to the head. But our boxing program, you hit bags and you hit focus mitts. So we'll have the coaches, which are physical therapists, holding mitts, and you run combinations. So boxing combinations, there's 6 different punches. And so it's like a motor and a cognitive way to exercise, which is really good for your brain to be thinking while you're moving your body. And yeah, we're going to take a commercial break.
We're going to take another commercial break. All right. We'll be right back after these messages. And welcome back to the final segment of the weekly radio show, the St. Johns County Council on Aging, here on WFOY 102.1 FM, your local radio station for news, sports, and talk. I'm Brian Robinson, Program Director for COA, joined this morning by Dr. Melanie Lomaglio with the Rebloom Center. And prior to commercial, you were talking about some of the different classes that you have there. And so my next question is, does it cost the people anything to attend the classes?
Good question. So most of our programming is free. So in addition to like the classes, and I didn't mention, we also have some speech therapy classes to help people with their voice production and swallow function. And we have a kazoo choir. Most of those classes are free. We do have a membership for our boxing program. That's $80 a month, and they can box twice a week, again, in the class that's most appropriate for their fitness level and stage of disease. And that, is a fee that we charge to help sustain our programs. But if somebody is unable to pay that, then we can give them a grant to join the program. So nobody is, stopped from participating due to financial reasons. And then we do have all these other options that are completely free of charge. So if they didn't want to apply for a grant, we have the power classes, the yoga classes, the voice classes, all of our educational programming. Those are all free.
And the website is?
www.rebloomcenter.org. You have to add that word center, otherwise you'll hit flower stores.
Okay, rebloomcenter.org. So if you're out there listening, you want to learn more about everything, just go to rebloomcenter.org.
We have a Facebook page too.
Okay. So I want to let you talk about like the future, like what programs you're hoping to get started and so forth. But first, I want to make sure you talk a little bit more about this kazoo choir. Tell us more about that and why you do it.
So our speech therapist runs that. We do that once a month. It's on the first Friday of the month. And kazoos, if you go way back to birthday party days, they were in the goodie bags or the loot bags. It takes a lot of air to make sound. And so when you're pushing the air through the kazoo choir or through the kazoo, in the kazoo choir, you're actually strengthening the muscles of the larynx and pharynx to help with swallow function and voice production. So one of the issues that people with Parkinson's experience, that's very common, is a low, quiet voice. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but it really interferes with socialization and interaction
Sure.
because people can't hear you when you speak. And so it's sometimes just easier to not speak at all and sort of pull yourself out of the conversation. So working on voice production is really important for quality of life. And those same muscles that, excuse me, you use for voice are also important for swallow function. And swallowing is critical to being alive. And when you can't swallow properly, you can develop those things like a pneumonia that can make you really sick. So it's a very important part of our programming is the voice training. And we have a wonderful speech therapist that runs those classes, and those are all free.
And so the kazoo choir is just kind of a way to making it fun.
Correct.
To do the exercises that are going to
Yes.
strengthen those muscles.
And our speech therapist is great. She's pulling music that is familiar to people, and they have a lot of fun, making music together. So.
And do they travel around and do
That's a good
concerts?
question. No, they do usually a mini Christmas concert at our holiday party that's coming up. But no, we should travel around and make our next fundraiser.
Yeah. Well, that's fun. I love that you incorporate a lot of, just trying to make it fun while they're doing it.
Absolutely. We really try to create a community. So we have support groups as well. We have a ladies only group, we have a caregiver group, and we have a men's only group. So that those people, it makes our community so large that breaking people up into smaller groups helps it to be more intimate, form more meaningful relationships. So it's not always about exercise, although that's, my passion as a physical therapist. We really try to promote socialization and connection with each other to create a community. And it's working. It's wonderful. These people are family. We get really close to them, and it's what fuels me every day is seeing those connections and seeing people exchange phone numbers and things like that.
Sure. So before you tell us your thoughts on the future and what you like to do, if folks want to give, because you are a nonprofit,
Yes.
So if folks want to give, can they do that online?
Yes, there is a donate button on our website. We also have a Venmo account, and you can go to the Facebook page as well.
All right. So if you're out there listening this morning and you want to contribute, just go to rebloomcenter.org.
Yep.
And you can donate. That's fantastic. All right, tell us, before we run out of time here this morning, some of your ideas and thoughts for the future, like things that you hope that you can do if you have all the money that you need.
Well, we do have a new program launching in January. It's a rock climbing program. So it's going to be a pilot program. We're just starting it with 6 folks who have Parkinson's disease at Stone Gym here in town. That's also going to be a free program that's covered by Rebloom. And so we're really excited about that. That's also like a motor cognitive program. I don't think it will be for everybody because some people will have fear of heights, and it will be a challenging program, but it's definitely going to fit a certain group of people's interests and needs. So that's going to be starting in January. And if it's successful, we'll continue it on. And then the next thing we're hoping to launch is a caregiver program. So we have a survey out right now to determine what the needs are of that group, but that is an underserved community of people. Our caregivers work tirelessly to help their loved ones manage Parkinson's disease, and their own health can sometimes suffer. So we're looking at starting an exercise class just for caregivers so that they can take care of their bodies and stay strong to be a better caregiver or care partner. And we're also looking at providing social services for that group. So we're connected with a social worker that does psychotherapy sessions one-on-one for people, helping like caregivers that she's very well versed in Parkinson's disease, and hoping to pilot that program in the new year as well to help people with caregiver burnout and just, stay healthy and emotionally healthy as well.
No, I'm glad that you're focusing on them. My wife and I took care of her parents for about three and a half years. Her father had a brain aneurysm rupture and was paralyzed on his left side. And so we had to basically do everything for him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so caregiving is very rough. And 6 months after he had his brain aneurysm rupture, her mom got diagnosed with breast cancer. So, so we went through that journey with them and for about 3.5 years until they both passed away. But
and nobody takes care of
it's exhausting.
The caregivers.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we have a great caregiver support program at the Council on Aging, and it's mostly focused on those who are caregiving for those with dementia.
Correct.
And so it's great to hear that you're doing something for the caregivers, caring for those with Parkinson's.
Yes, so that's what we're hoping to grow into this new year. So we will be doing something for caregivers. We don't know exactly which programs are going to be the most popular. Right now, the survey is coming back with split results, so I'll have to decide which one we pilot first. But that is my goal, is to continue to expand our offerings to support that group more.
And what I've discovered, I was in ministry for a number of years, and we would start different programs and so forth. And, sometimes it's just a matter of getting it started.
Right.
And then sometimes it just, you start something, you think it's a great idea, and you might have some folks interested at first, and then it just dwindles away.
Yes.
And then you might start something that has a very low interest, and then word spreads.
Right.
And the next thing you know, you got a lot of people coming to a program.
That's what I'm wondering is going to happen with the rock climbing program. Like right now, it's low interest because it seems scary.
Sure.
But I think once we've got these 6 people in and they start talking about it, how fun it is, that's going to be volunteer belayers. And so they won't have to belay. They just get to climb. They don't have to climb to the top. That's not the goal. It's just get out there and climb and challenge yourself. And it's very safe because once you're in that belay system, you can't fall. So I think once the word gets out, like you said, hopefully that program will become popular and we'll be able to grow it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I look forward to hearing about it next year. Hopefully you'll have great success with both of those.
I can't believe our time's up.
What's that?
I can't believe our time is up.
I know, it goes by quickly. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the show to tell us more about what you're doing. I so appreciate what you're doing for those with Parkinson's, and I appreciate the collaboration that we have. We love sending people your way, and
vice versa.
Thank you for what you do. All right, everybody, we'll be back next week. We'll see you then.